I can taste the lactic acid. Tastes like pennies. Might seem kind of counterintuitive, me starting a video, turning myself inside out based on the title of this, but check this. This is just a 32-minute hard ride with 20-second microburst intervals. So when athletes get onto our training app, a lot of times they are shocked at how little we end up training them, and then coming to a race, they're like, I don't know if I am ready for this because I haven't done that much really big training. I haven't suffered that much. Well, that's the key. Have you ever been on a group ride or run that was supposed to be a easy workout, and then one person pushes and then everyone answers, and then another person pushes and then everyone answers, and then before you know it, you're going at tempo effort for 2 to 5 hours? Well, the same thing has happened with the culture of endurance training. People look at the hours that other people are putting in, and then they step it up a little bit, and then they step it up a little bit beyond that, and then everyone else answers, and before you know it, everyone thinks that you have to be doing a 17-hour training week to be considered a serious triathlete. Well, I'm here to tell you that I can prove to you and I can comfort you and let you know that that's incorrect. I'm going to show you how you can, with an 8-hour training week on average, even do well in an Ironman while staying healthy, while keeping a good relationship with your family, with your friends, a nice balance, not feeling like dirt, and you can still get that challenge of performing at your very best. There will certainly, however, be some screaming required, like in that ride. Okay, so there was a super interesting study that came out recently that I want to share with you that gets to what I'm getting at. Now, this study here, you can Google it. It's called Impact of Training Volume and Experience on Amateur Ironman Triathlon Performance. They looked at the performance of athletes at Ironman Brazil. One of the biggest things that they found here, I'll just read it to you. Total race time did not differ amongst those who trained up to 14 hours a week, between 15 and 20 hours a week, or more than 20 hours per week. In fact, when you look at this, you can see that the athletes who trained less than 14 hours a week actually did the best between all of the 3 different cohorts. Now, this is an Ironman. You might think, okay, well, maybe it's just the total amount of training time that people can't handle. Well, we asked Dr. Rafaela Sinisgali about this on the podcast and whether this would be the case only for Ironman or whether it would be the case for all different distances of races, and the answer was actually the opposite of what I expected.
Well, honestly, I think that the result wouldn't change if I was studying short distance like a sprint triathlon or Olympic triathlon or even a half Ironman. I think the result would be just the same as the longest distance, because it's clear that what really matters is not just the volume of training hours, but how is this athlete responding to that training load? How is he feeling? How is he recovering? How is his whole life? And not only the training volume.
So she's speculating that people are just training more than they can handle for actual performance. But it's not just performance, it's actually our health that we are risking. This next study here, called Training for Longevity, the Reverse J-Curve for Exercise, states that current studies suggest that 2 to 5 hours per week of moderate or vigorous physical activity will confer maximal benefits, and that past 10 hours a week may reduce these health benefits. A related study that this study actually refers to is called the Goldilocks zone for exercise. Not too little, not too much. They have this graph here that shows when you adjust for age, sex, smoking, alcohol intake, education, and diabetes, joggers who are actually strenuous joggers have a higher likelihood of all-cause mortality than completely sedentary people. That it's light jogging and moderate jogging where there's actual benefit. And this isn't just a few studies that I'm cherry picking. I've actually found over the last few years a number of studies that point to the exact same thing, that training volume, just indiscriminately saying more is better, isn't actually the case. When you actually start looking at training composition and having a proper training plan, that's when you actually start seeing some separation in more hours being better, but it has to all be designed well. Now, everyone thinks that they are designing their programs well, but I guarantee everyone in that Ironman study that thought 20 some hours of training is what they needed didn't think that they were training improperly. So then what does actually result in better performance? Well, a colleague of Dr. Raffaella, Dr. Paolo Puccinelli, actually came up with this study called Previous Experience, Aerobic Capacity, and Body Composition are the best predictors for Olympic distance triathlon performance, predictors in amateur triathlon. And one of the biggest takeaways that he found was triathlon experience predicts swim, cycle, and total triathlon race time. That the best predictor of triathlon performance is doing previous triathlons. Now you might say, hey, well, of course that's the case. But what people are ignoring is that they're training too much. They're risking their overall health, leading to illness, injury, taking them out of the game, and not allowing them to have quite a number of races under their belt in order to be able to race and have longevity in the sport and be able to become the athlete that they want. I put this survey out on YouTube to see why I think this might be happening. Well, we have here, how many hours per week do you train on average when you don't have a race that you're prepping for? 68% said less than 10. That's fantastic, you're maintaining health. But that means that 32% are training year round, potentially damaging their overall health. And then what do you think is gonna happen on race day if you're not healthy? But then when you get into the race preparation phase, and keep in mind, this is not all just Ironman athletes, this is all triathletes as a whole, only 44% are training less than 10 hours. Now, here's why I think that the damage is occurring and races aren't being performed very well. 54% of people in this next poll get less than 7 hours of sleep. Now, when you start looking at big amounts of study data as a whole, the general consensus is that you need around 7.5 hours of good quality sleep to be able to just function at an optimal level. Never mind function at a peak level. So we have athletes that are training enough that it is very risky while not actually balancing that with enough recovery. The gist of this is that there is no shortcut. If you want to, try to become a fantastic athlete and you try to rush it, you are likely going to not actually be that much better by having that many more additional hours, because that's just what the data shows. You need to go through the process over a number of years. Dr. Paolo Puccinelli, in a podcast that we did with him, actually said 1 year per race distance. So 1 year conquering sprint, 1 year conquering Olympic, 1 year conquering half Ironman, 1 year conquering Ironman. I think that's a fantastic rule of thumb. But then what if you say, well, hey, I just want to finish? Well, in that case, don't beat yourself up. So in both cases, what we're getting to is less training that is more well designed is what you need. So here are the 3 things that my team and I do in our training app to keep people performing well while still staying healthy. The first one is that when there isn't a race on the schedule, the average number of training hours peaks at around 8.5 total hours. That's going to keep all of the athletes very healthy for most of the year. You're not going to dip into that risky stage where you're risking your overall health and your ability to recover. The second thing that we on our team do is that during that time, we actually peel back the intensity of most of the training. We have a very small amount with 30-minute workouts that have little bursts of speed to keep everyone nice and sharp and strong. But most of the time, heart rates are kept really low. So this is going to keep your VO2 max nice and high because we're keeping those sharp efforts, but it's not going to train you into the ground, and it's going to keep you aerobically nice and fit. What we make up that time with is additional strength training. So year round, what's happening is you're keeping your VO2 max high, you're keeping your top end the speed high, you're keeping your aerobic base really fit, but you're building lots of strength because that's when we load up on strength training. Then we end up getting into the race prep, and that's the third thing that we do. In that race preparation phase, what our athletes end up doing is they just build up gradually, have a few epic days, and because they're so healthy, so fit, so strong from that base level of fitness training that they're able to absorb everything, the expectations aren't so super high that it's impossible to fit in with real life, and then they're going to races and outperforming what they ever expected they could possibly do. Now, if you want to hear the podcast that we did with Dr. Paolo, Dr. Raffaella, those links are in the description below, and if you want to check out our training app, you can try it free for 14 days. There's also a link to that in the description below. But the big thing about this is that you don't need to train as much as you think you do, as hard as you think you do. You actually need to dial it way back to stay healthy so that you can train year after year after year and become the athlete that you never expected that you could possibly be. Now, we put a lot of work into sourcing these podcast guests and going through these studies and finding the information that is going to help you out. If you found this information helpful, I would love if you hit the like button below, and that is all for today. Later, Trainiacs.